Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Ashish and I are here to talk about our success with Pivotal Cloud Foundry and with Azure. So we're going to talk about our journey and explain how we made our decision to use this, what our goals were, and some of the lessons that we learned as we did it. So first, who is Merill? I'll talk a little bit about us. So this is me. I'm from Austin, Texas, and born in Sweden, but spent most of my life in the US, so dual nationality. And this is my favorite thing to do. So if I wasn't here with you today, my ultimate favorite thing would be to be out on the slopes. Yes, that's after the flip. And this is Ashish.
Hey everyone, I'm Ashish Pagey. I'm an architect at Merrill, and I've been building software for about 18 years. And besides that, the thing I love to do is listen to music, and I'm also a consummate audiophile. So in this presentation, we'll talk about Azure and Pivotal, but if you also want to talk about building a kick-ass 2-channel analog system, find me after the talk.
So who is Merrill? So first off, are we the shoe company? This is probably the thing we most get confused about. The answer is no, we are not the shoe company. Are we the financial services company that sells things like stocks and so forth? No, we are not the financial services company. So what we are is a company that's been around for about 50 years that really has its genesis as a financial printing company. So what a financial printer does is they typically help companies that are going through complex transactions or are addressing complicated regulatory requirements. So in other words, if your company were to do an IPO, a company like Merrill, and preferably Merrill of course, would be the ones that would work with your company to draft your S1 in preparation for your IPO event. Likewise, we provide things like virtual data rooms for mergers and acquisitions. And I can't tell you about most of the deals that we do, but suffice it to say that if you go through kind of a list of the big deals that are done, there's a very good chance that Merrill has been part of making that really big deal happen. So we've done some of the largest on a global basis. This is our focus: financial transactions and reporting, marketing and communications for regulated industry. There are healthcare communication regulations that need to be met. Same thing for mutual funds. We do that. And in general, we handle customer content and collaboration. And my pitch, and I'm going to come back to this at the end, is we're looking for talent. So product management, DevOps, development, you name it. If you're interested, come and see me. So just a quick poll. In here, how many people are using Azure? Just a quick show of hands. Okay, so roughly a quarter maybe. Who's using microservices? Okay, third to half. Who's using PCF? Okay, so then the last one, of course, PCF on Azure. Oh, great, okay. So anyone that's using PCF on Azure, I'd love to talk to you too and share our stories about what we've been doing. I'll talk about our journey, about some of the business challenges and opportunities. We'll get into the architecture, why PCF, why Azure, and then our learnings as we've gone through this. This represents Merrill's business. So what you see here is a map of the world. There are a lot of circles here. There are some big numbers here. Our customers are absolutely everywhere, and our customers have very stringent requirements for data residency. So our EU customers in particular feel that their interpretation of privacy rules is quite strict, and they believe that their information should not leave any servers that are based in the EU. This is poised to become more complex with the implications of the Brexit, the British exit of the EU. So we're quite interested to see what happens there. And part of what we know we need to solve for is the global nature of our business. Likewise, in China, which is a relatively new market for us, but we've got a Hong Kong-based office, we're trying to understand the unique characteristics of that market because it's different. It's different from the EU. It's different from the US. Their requirements and expectations are different. So one of the things that we need is a partner that can work with us across a multitude of different regions. Security and compliance are critical for us. In particular, ISO 27001. We need it to be architected in from the beginning. So our customers have very high expectations in terms of the security of their information. And if you think about it, the sort of stuff that we deal with, like a quarterly report or an annual report, that stuff moves markets. So it has to be right, and you just can't afford any screw-ups. One of our competitors screwed up an SEC filing for a very large public company, and that company's stock price was impacted by $7 billion the next day. So it was kind of the heyday for us because we could go after the competitor for this. But the point is that this information is really, really important, and it has to be right. We have to move fast, so I can't really think of any industry that's moving slower or any industry that can rest on its laurels. I mean, where things are going today, I think there was a quote from the CEO of Ford saying that the direction for Ford is that Ford is really going to be sort of computers on wheels, mobile computers versus kind of focusing on things as cars, which is really interesting. I mean, anyone that's in a traditional business faces the forces of disintermediation or a different value proposition that is technology based. So it's just mandatory. You have to move fast, and really you want to be the disruptor, not the disrupted, as you're doing that. We suffer from some old monolithic systems, so systems that have been around for a while that have become increasingly difficult to maintain. It's kind of, some of you, your dev practice may be such that you address tech debt on a regular basis, and your systems are very modular, and you don't have any of these issues. And if so, bravo. Really, that's outstanding. That's not the situation that we've been in for a lot of our legacy systems, kind of our systems have been around for a while, our systems that are products that we provide for our customer base. So we run into a situation that, for lack of a better way of describing it, it's kind of like your elbow is connected to your ankle bone. Does that make any sense? No. But you just run into these situations where a change in one area has unexpected consequences in another area. So we're looking for a different level of modularity and something that can give us the equivalent of lasting Lego blocks, where we can sort of manage complexity, keep things small, keep things loosely coupled. So that's quite important for us. And as we do this, we can't do it alone. So we need coaching. Our thought was, hey, who do we partner with that's going to be able to provide us with consulting resources, that's going to be able to provide us with a process, with methodology, that's going to allow us to succeed. In the past at Merill and perhaps in some of your companies, there have been situations where, long time back, before I joined, I've been at Merill for a little less than a year now, and I'm the first chief product officer that Merill has had, and I've really brought a focus on technology and product. But before my time, there were situations where Merill brought in a technology framework but didn't really train people the appropriate way to use that technology framework and didn't have support. And that kind of results in some fits and starts where you end up sort of going sideways from where you expected. And it's really hard to get back on track. So we wanted to make sure we avoided that by having the right infrastructure in place. So that's a little bit about our challenges and our opportunities. And now Ashish is going to talk about the architecture.
Thanks. So, when I came to Merill, I did an application portfolio assessment and looked at the architecture of the applications. And I reached the conclusion that these are state-of-the-art applications if you were in 2002 or 2001. And unfortunately, software doesn't age like wine. We wish it would. And a lot of these applications were built on a three-tiered layered architecture approach, which was great when we were taking our businesses to the internet, starting up e-commerce site or doing customer self-service applications. But over the years, we had multiple of these applications built, each one with its full stack of database and business logic and presentation, and it was hard to bring them together. And as I looked at some of the business goals that Thomas just talked about increasing velocity, bringing new products to market faster, I realized it's just going to be very hard to do it by small refactoring or re-engineering of our applications on the current architecture. And we did take a serious look at those things to see, hey, could we just change the UI layer, or could we, bundle the existing business logic into services? And the fact was, trying to do that on top of a code base that was several million lines that was built with, more traditional three-tier separation versus vertical separation in the business logic was just not going to be palatable. And any speed we could get would purely be by increasing the number of developers or making them sweat a little harder. So the fair conclusion there was that we're going to have to really look at the foundational architecture from a fresh perspective. And as we started to outline the conceptual architecture, the guiding principles we had were let's try not to reinvent the wheel. Anything that's been done either in the industry or by another group within Merill, let's not try to rebuild it again. And with multiple applications with their three tiers, every application was trying to solve some of the same problems. How do I manage data? How do I manage data flows? So our rule was in our architecture, we shouldn't be rebuilding stuff. And the natural outcome of that was to come up with a platform approach where we're going to have a common platform upon which we're going to have our applications built. The second main thing was we wanted to reduce the amount of time we spend on plumbing, connecting components together, getting a database, getting a message queue, those kind of things. We didn't want to spend a lot of time from the developers, filling out tickets, waiting on multiple handoffs and meetings, and all of those things that would take days before you got the necessary resources. The third thing we wanted to do was to manage our dependencies very cleanly so that we can work on components as independent teams and then be able to connect them together to serve additional use cases that we find from a product research perspective. So this is a conceptual architecture we came up with. When we had the candidate architecture, we hadn't necessarily picked Pivotal or Azure for that matter, but we came up with a list of things we're going to need from our platform container that would allow us to realize and be true to the three principles I just laid out. So as we started looking at the options in the market, we realized that PCF had a very good mapping to the requirements that I just shared on the previous slide. It really embodied the guiding principles and best practices that we were trying to build into the way we develop our products. And the only challenge was it was new to Merrill. It was seemingly new within the industry also. We could find a few people that were familiar with PCF, but not a ton. And we made a little attempt on our own to try to use the open source Cloud Foundry. And either we were not smart enough or it's too difficult to use that we didn't get too far. So incidentally, we did connect up with the right people, both from Microsoft and Pivotal, who shared some information around what they're doing with Pivotal and Azure. And with the intent of agility and speed in mind, the challenge we put together was in a matter of under 4 weeks, could we stand up an environment? Could we deploy the services we had built? And could we validate a set of key capabilities we need on this platform? So we engaged with PCF, and they had the Microsoft partners in there too, and really created a concrete list of use cases that we want to go over, and had a little conceptual outline of what that POC environment was going to look like. And our goal was to get the environment built in 2 weeks, and then spend 2 weeks, so 2 sprints essentially, on spending hands-on time with Pivotal, building our services, deploying them, and validating that all of the expectations we had from this platform were true. So the other things we looked at to varying degrees besides PCF were just using a container like Docker and a collection of open source frameworks for building applications like Spring Boot. We also looked at Azure Service Fabric, which at that time was not GA, and then building applications using frameworks on top of it. And then Pivotal Cloud Foundry with Spring Boot and Spring Cloud. And conceptually, based on our research, where we landed was the amount of work we're going to have to do to engineer and bring things together while we would be able to implement all of our objectives and guiding principles. But doing with just Docker and Spring Boot would require a lot more work to be done by us in terms of bringing them together. Azure Service Fabric was not GA at that time, so we were a little hesitant. We are using some app services component and paths from Azure still. But overall, after spending 2 sprints on it, hands-on, we found that PCF with Spring Boot and Spring Cloud was really going to help us meet our objectives the best, largely because they have already handled a lot of the integration things that we would have needed. Our developers who are coming from Java and Spring were able to pick up and transition to Spring Boot and Spring Cloud much more easily. And basically, it all worked sort of, as expected. So our journey, we started late December last year and had our Sprint 0 when we were evaluating and defining our candidate architecture and options. We did our due diligence. Then, as I mentioned, we spent 2 sprints on doing the technical POC. And then we spent longer than we expected on the procurement part of it. So one lesson learned, you can speed up the setup of the infrastructure and you can speed up the developers. Legal folks have not gone agile yet, so give it more time. And then once we had that procurement, done, then we partnered up with Pivotal to do a Dojo and implementation, which is about where we are. We've completed the Dojo, and we're planning to move our dev and QA environments to the new environment that we've built.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about why Azure, and then wrap it all up for you to give you a sense of what our lessons learned were going through the process. So I remember when I saw this security and compliance slide, and I was like, holy crap. It's a lot of security and compliance standards that are supported by Azure. And really behind this, Satya Nadella announced a $1 billion investment that Microsoft was making into security last year. So really, Microsoft's commitment to the enterprise, to security and to compliance, I believe that they're going to lead the market. So we wanted to align ourselves with the people that we felt would be most aligned with our business, and we believe that that's Microsoft. Furthermore, if you go to Microsoft, if you visit Seattle, their security center, I've never seen anything quite like it. It is a pretty amazing demonstration of of their commitment to security. So we think that they're the. Oh, I better talk fast.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up before 7% is done. So I mentioned before the global nature of our business, and Azure is a great fit for that. Of the cloud providers, it's by far the largest in terms of their global footprint. So 26 regions with 8 more to come, over 100 data centers. I think twice as many regions as Amazon, and more than that, over Google. So we felt that they were very well positioned to meet the needs of our global business. Quite comfortable with where they are. This is just, I was looking for a way of depicting the pace of innovation on Azure. Let's see that again for a second. There's just so much innovation that's occurring within the Azure environment. And it's not just within Azure, it's within Microsoft in general. So it seems that Microsoft has kind of rediscovered, or maybe has discovered agility under Satya Nadella, because the pace of innovation is very, very rapid, both in the product set. If you follow Office 365 and what's going on there, it seems like the introduction of new features is quite rapid. But also within Azure. So while I think Amazon was very early on, it seems that Azure is seizing the enterprise territory, and that's why we felt it was a good fit for us. So learnings and takeaways. So lessons on the way to production. Look, the biggest lesson for us was that the learning curve can be steep. Now, frankly, our developers got plenty of support, so they didn't really have a challenge, getting into, developing on PCF. Not really a big deal. But what I would tell you is we've got infrastructure people who are used to dealing with something that is very well defined. That's a 3-tier architecture. That's what they know how to deploy. And that doesn't really fit, the way that you introduce security and compliance on a model like that is not what you're going to do with a cloud native architecture with PCF. So of all the areas that we've had friction, I would say that has been the area of most friction with the steepest learning curve, where thankfully we've had a lot of support from Microsoft in terms of our Azure implementation to make sure that it's solid and robust for our needs, as well as from Pivotal. So the Pivotal Dojo, our whole team is a huge fan of the dojo, kind of going in, working together to define the foundation that makes sense for Merill. And beyond that, I think Pivotal's approach to agility in general. Most people think about Agile on the sort of delivery side of things. I think Pivotal, with their connection to Eric Ries, is also addressing agility on the front end. That is, what concepts does it make the most sense to go after? Anyone here that spent time working on a product, either for a company or on your own, that's had it not meet with success, knows how important it is to be able to market test things, and how important the sort of front end of agility is to do that market discovery. So we're in the process of implementing that within Merill. And I would say, to the last point here, start with a clean slate. Again, just don't assume that the way that you've done things is going to be the right way to do things moving forward.
Well, one thing to add on that last point, I think, I want to underscore that part, because we kind of lived through that in a painful manner, where our network design was essentially a kind of a lift off on-premise to the cloud. So where we had, firewalls, there was a firewall in the cloud. Where we had DMZs, we tried to replicate that. And with on-premise, unless you put something out on the network and out to the web, it's not there. And so everything was designed with that in mind. Versus with cloud, well, everything is in the cloud unless you protect it not to be accessible from certain locations. So that just required a completely new way of thinking about the network design. So All right. So in our journey, where we are, we've got 2 spaces in 1 PCF domain deployed in 1 data center. So we're in the US. And our future roadmap involves kind of expanding it to other geographies where Merrill does business. We, since starting, have onboarded 6 Scrum teams that are now using PCF. And just before coming, I was getting some input from the developers. And the biggest thing they like about it is the self-service aspect. If they need a new endpoint deployed, either for a test or pilot or trying out a new idea, they don't have to start out getting machines and getting domain names set up, etc. They can do all that stuff by themselves. So they really like that. We have about 40 to 50-ish apps or services deployed on PCF. So we're building with the microservices approach. And this includes our core atomic services as well as composite services. And then we've got 5 tiles or services from Pivotal being utilized. The time to deploy new apps, as I mentioned, now we've gone from many hours and days to a few hours, less than a day for sure. And from a continuous integration perspective also, we're doing multiple builds every day. And then right now we're at a end of 2-week sprint cadence for demos and features available to the product team. But we're progressing towards making that more faster.
So to sum up, how we met our challenges and our opportunities, from a global perspective, Azure is just a perfect fit with their really large global footprint. So really ideal, not just for what we're addressing today, but for our needs moving forward in the future. From a security and compliance perspective, there's a very comprehensive approach. Again, it fits perfectly with our business, exactly what we need. The need for speed is addressed well by the Pivotal innovation methodology, the way of developing software, the way of working together. Pivotal does a great job teaching pair programming techniques and kind of pulling people into their labs, their environments, and showing you the way. If you haven't done it that way before, it can be pretty different. So it's great to get sort of an immersive course. It's like an immersive course in a language or something like that. Monolithic systems to a microservices architecture sitting on top of PCF. So really happy with where that's going to go. I've had previous experiences with microservices architecture, with kind of thinking about things as swim lanes. Very easy to scale compared to monolithic systems. Very easy to update, to enhance, and of course driven by APIs. So you can change out the underlying implementation without any problems. And finally, the coaching and support that we've received from both Microsoft and from Pivotal. So they've been great partners for us. And it's not just been lip service, it's been real, active with us, trying to understand the challenges as we run through and working with us to address those challenges. So we've been very pleased with that. So our final slide here, I would say Merrill is in the process of a huge change. Going from kind of more of a legacy company that's been around for 50 years to really focus on SaaS plus services. So where we're headed and what we're going to be is a SaaS plus services company. And I think that our growth trajectory really reflects that. And we're very excited, building off of a large global footprint. The company, to give you a sense of scale, has got about 3,800 employees. So this is not a small company. And we're really excited about where we're going, and Azure and Pivotal, or Microsoft Azure and Pivotal PCF, are helping to take us into the future. Again, if anyone's interested in jobs, love to meet you. Tammy.gold@merrillcorp.com is the email address. And there's a deeper dive presentation tomorrow at 12:10. Keep calm and CF push on. So that's another session if you want to get a deeper dive. So thank you very much.